StuDichotomy.
A class of kids.
Crucial, thought-provoking questions.
And occasionally something serious mixed in.
Featuring the kids of Shref Tech.
And Brad Schreffler.
Hello, welcome to the StuDichotomy podcast. We're here with episode 13 in first period. I have Colton, Mr. Schreffler, Preston, and Alex. They'll be joining us today. And then in the back, we might have a couple side comments from Diego and Avi. But
Your name is Perry, correct?
That's might be me.
Okay,
but,
there we go.
I mean, if you don't watch our podcast on a weekly basis, or listen to it, actually, it would be the correct word. Then,
well, since no one can ever see us, I don't really know if they could, remember.
You'd know my voice by now. But today's topics are testing days and how irrelevant they should be, and card games, seeing as how that's what we've been doing for the past week.
What else are you supposed to do during testing days, though?
Play Mario Kart all day.
Which got a student in trouble.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. For sure not talking about that part.
Yeah. It happened.
So it's currently April, May. By the time this releases, technically, it'll be the beginning of May, which for many parts of the country means we're in hardcore testing mode, and everywhere is state testing, federal testing, district testing. It's a little all over the place. In fact, that's why StuDichotomy had been on a brief hiatus for the last couple weeks, because with testing schedules and messed up things, I've only seen you guys in small amounts of time and not for the full length we would normally have you, and not predictably the lengths we would normally have. So testing days, kind of a mess.
Yeah, totally not laziness on our part at all.
But I mean, like, with some people,
no,
they don't need,
it definitely is kind of hard.
For some days, they don't even have class. Like, there's people that I know that have first through fourth period, and then some days on testing day, they only have 5, 6, and 7 for the classes, and they don't even have to come to school.
Even if they only had one period, they wouldn't come.
Exactly.
It's not.
Well, and as a teacher, as a teacher end of it, balancing your load is a pain. You know, if I teach 6 sections of the same thing, and I don't see 6th period as much as I see 4th or 5th, it's a pain to try to get 6th period caught back up later.
Especially with so little time left in the school year.
I mean, I think since most of us see like most of your holding rooms are like first period, I think it's hard for that teacher just to like sit there, because they kind of want to teach you, because it's like, oh, I have you for an hour and a half, like every day for the next like 4 days. But then, like, you have to think about it in the teacher standpoint. They don't want to get all their other classes behind. So, I mean, I kind of understand why you just sit there and do nothing.
It's a tough balance. I think as a teacher, I would like to say that on a lot of these testing days, I was doing some sort of enrichment or fun activity that was not just playing cards or whatever. We have an added difficulty for what we do, right? Because we're the tech support side. So when testing doesn't work, it becomes on us to help the 40, 50, 60, 100 kids that are standing outside and in a line waiting for us to fix their devices, like I was yesterday.
And it was the same issue. So, like, there was just the same exact thing was happening over and over.
My back still hurts from leaning over those tables. I'm not kidding. Like, for 2 hours straight, I leaned over these 2 tables trying to work on laptops and get things working for testing yesterday.
That's what I missed yesterday?
I would have been there, but I actually had to test.
Oh, no.
Doesn't hurt because the laptops or the escape room shuffle.
Yesterday, I just decided to take one off. Everybody does.
I actually came in early to play Mario Kart, and you weren't here. So,
well, for one day,
I was a little bit upset.
I mean, every day last week and this week, other than Thursday, I've been here early.
Well, maybe during our 1 hour testing period for first period.
So it has been a lot of wasted time, and I think that's something that when we talk about testing and how much time it disrupts, we don't think about. So, for example, for you guys, you're all seniors. How many tests have you actually had to take in the last 2 weeks?
0.
1. How many things have you actually been taught in the last 2 weeks?
Nothing by this school.
Alex, you're not even in classes here, so let's be fair.
I mean, it would be just review, but I mean, it would be nothing other than that.
But I just mean, like, you haven't had classes. Because underclassmen are testing,
right.
Seniors lose out on all their classes, and then because you're seniors, you just don't show up instead of coming and doing nothing. But you don't it doesn't technically count as a testing day for you, but it still completely disrupts your learning time.
Well, I learned about Jane Austen, but that was it because my English teacher holds class every single day.
Well, yes,
We have
your
class.
English teacher does that because she understands the value of learning.
No, she does, and I completely respect it, but
So testing becomes a nightmare. It becomes a bit of a mess trying to record or trying to figure out what to do with your students when you're testing. Can you imagine, is there something in your head that says there could be a better solution?
oh, Lord. Avi now joining us on the podcast.
Have a card game room.
We could have a card game, you said?
Yeah, card game room.
Well, I don't really
Dedicated
think
card
that would
game.
help
That's
learning. That's not really helping the learning problems.
I learn more from card games than school.
You just want to talk about card games is really what you want.
Sure.
We have played an excessive amount of card games recently.
That's very
We could start with less testing.
Less testing. So how would you optimize that?
Look at Perry with the big words.
I'm actually awake this morning, so I'm actually kind of competent for this podcast.
Oh, competent. Come through, Perry.
I mean, most of the time when I'm on the podcast, I'm saying or like all right.
What was the word that you kept using that one time?
Probably.
Yeah,
Probably.
probably.
So this morning I'm feeling pretty good. So how would you plan to optimize? Less testing.
That's a good question.
Well, the problem with reducing testing is what does it mean for accountability? How do we know that students are learning? How do we know things are actually happening? If we reduce testing, how do we prove that our job is being done?
Well, for starters, okay. We have how much testing? Do you know how much testing we do like in 1 year? I feel like we don't need that much testing for one.
But if you have 7
Consolidate-
classes, 5 of them are core classes.
The testing that has been happening isn't even for like your classes. It's not like
Yeah, not for our classes, but other classes are doing that. So what they should do is they should try to get as much testing as they need done in one block.
Yeah, see.
But the issue is the testing that they're doing is like only for like sophomores or something like that. So the same sophomores that need to take one test have to take another test 2 days later.
I feel like it should be treated just like AP testing. Like everybody,
Yeah, just a
everybody
2-week
just
thing.
everybody just goes and does their thing, and classes still run on normally. Like as much as a lot of people wouldn't like that, I feel like that'd probably be the best way to
Well,
do
but
it.
think about yesterday's test, or let's just talk about state English exam, right? If it's the state English exam day, every single freshman on campus has to take the test. So, do you just how do you disrupt all of the freshman classes? How do you then have the proctors, the adults that have to monitor that testing, but also still have classes happen? And we have a
The
lot
teachers
of
who aren't teaching.
blended grade level classes, though.
But I mean, the
But
English
if it's
teachers,
the English, because English isn't blended grade level.
Yeah, it is. It
Well,
could be.
it's not really. Typically, no. But the problem is, okay, so
well, you say you
There's
have
one teacher that
you
could have.
can't. So think about it. As a 9th grade English teacher, I have 125 students a day. I cannot proctor 125 students during the 9th grade English exam. I can only proctor
If
25.
you think about it, there's in max 4 freshman English teachers, and they all can't proctor.
Well, they can all proctor, but they're not enough people to. You still need way more people to proctor.
That's what I'm saying.
besides that.
Why
You
don't
have
we use
at least-
teachers that
Yeah.
have planning periods?
Or substitute teachers,
'Cause their
because
planning
you're going to be
periods aren't
using the
long
substitute teachers anyway if we're using... Why can't they proctor?
Security. They're not trained.
Oh,
They're
cool.
barely capable of staring at a class and doing nothing, let alone
Gosh.
Sorry, am I throwing too much shade on subs?
Sorry to all the substitute teachers out there.
Listen,
He
I was
just
a
can't
sub.
control
Does your
himself.
teacher
Straight
usually
taking
let you
phone
do
calls
that?
in the middle of class.
Does your teacher usually let you do that? All right, it's fine. Just go ahead and do it.
Or you have those ones that are just like, no, you cannot do that.
Go to the bathroom because it's an emergency? Oh
time.
my gosh.
Like, I think we have how many more like normal days of school that won't be 3?
I feel like
If I'm
somebody did
correct?
the math, and
Yeah,
you guys walk out in 2.5 weeks,
Yeah.
right? And we have, I think, 3
2
days
more
of
days,
class.
16 days.
we
Because
test
next
3
week
days
is
next week,
next week is senior exams.
Exams.
Yep.
So that's
Which
pretty
disrupts
much
the rest of the school.
which is
Mm-hmm.
2 periods out of the day that are elongated.
Senior
And
exams aren't as bad because
You
it
see all the
still
classes.
runs even.
Yeah.
Your amount of at the end of the week, your amount of time with each of your class periods is even. So if you're not a senior teacher, you can still easily sort of use that time and just rebalance your workload.
Yeah.
Like I would always do when it was senior exam days, I would always do projects of some kind.
Right.
That it could be done any day of the week for each class, but they had this like 2-hour chunk to do a really more in-depth
That makes
lesson.
sense.
That's doable. But these kinds of exams where they're state exams that don't hit evenly, that's where we really run into problems. Alex?
So the real question is, during the state testing, why are we always in first period? Why don't we switch up the classes that we're in?
We've done that before. It just ends up
It
being
just-
confusing.
yeah.
First, very few teachers take advantage of the time, for one thing. Honestly, like how many of your teachers really will take advantage of that big chunk of time because they only have the one class? And it's confusing to the students to be told, okay, go to, you get here first thing in the morning, now go to 5th period or go to 6th period.
But, I mean, it's already confusing.
It's already tremendously confusing.
Yeah, because if
What
you
would-
told somebody to go to 5th period and then the schedule for that day is 2, 3, 4, you're like, why did we do it that way?
It's confusing for the teachers. It's confusing for the staff. We've tried here and every other school. We've tried as many ways as we can think of to limit disruptions, and I don't think there is one because the ultimate problem isn't how much we're disrupting class; it's how much we're testing. You can only minimize so much with as many testing days as we have, and you can't look at each grade level in isolation. And I think that's where a lot of our calculations run into problems. We look at each grade level in isolation and say, well, this is how many tests this grade level takes, and this is how many tests this grade level takes. But you have to look at the testing on all 4 grade levels summatively and look at the amount of days we lose to testing that way. I mean, you guys know how often we use that media center and we're stuck in this room instead of our actual classroom to do. I mean, it's all the time, right?
Because of testing.
See, if the classes that each grade level took were actually standardized, I guess, like maybe there could be one singular test instead of like a bunch of different tests, like sort of like maybe kind of an SAT format type thing.
Like a PERT?
Sort of, yeah.
Here's a better question. Why don't we just use the SAT and stop doing all of these other tests?
Because the government,
standardized
that's why.
testing is garbage in general. So, therefore, that leads us on to our next subject, card games, and
It doesn't
how
actually,
interesting.
Though, 'cause there's a question that
Yeah,
needs to
you
be
didn't
solved,
answer his
though.
question.
I did
at all.
answer his question. I said standardized testing is stupid and we
Like the
shouldn't do it
SAT has a
anymore.
writing portion, but they don't really have a
That's
history
exactly how
portion.
Scheffler feels about it. Ask him about it.
A
There's
history portion. Why do
there's
we,
really there. So ultimately, here's the thing.
Science?
what
all
did
the
that
other
be
To
called?
me,
Teacher, though?
testing. You have to determine the goal of testing, number one. And the goal of testing is, what do you guys think the goal of testing? With all these big state standardized tests, what's the goal?
To make you
To
look
really
better.
prove that the
get a
teachers are
number
actually
to
doing their
graduate.
jobs.
Prove teachers are doing their jobs. What?
In I mean, let's be real. It's to get a certain score. They put it on your transcript, and then you like the FSA. What does that really mean to these freshmen? Like, and
But is
sophomores?
so you can look at it one of two ways. It's to make the school look good or bad, depending to make sure the teachers are doing their jobs, right? Or it's to make sure you guys hit some sort of proficiency standard
Yeah,
to make sure you're there.
that's it.
But does it accomplish the proficiency requirement? Because we give you 900 retakes, we give you alternate ways to get those scores. Like you can actually replace most of these state exams can have an equivalency score on the PERT or the SAT that will say you don't have to pass them anymore.
Exactly.
So why are we
Exactly.
making a middleman? It doesn't make sense. Or it's to determine if the school's doing their job, but it's such a black box for teachers. We don't really know what's going to be on the test. We know the standards, but we don't know what the questions are necessarily going to look like. We don't have a lot of information. The tests are often horribly written and have mistakes and errors and everything else, which get fixed in the end. They don't count those questions, and they do a lot of vetting, but the amount of time and money spent into writing all these tests and developing these tests when there's already the SAT making them all for us, why are we doing any of this?
In the extreme,
To keep Pearson afloat.
that's what I was
Bingo.
The monopoly of Pearson.
Bingo. That's pretty much it. Cool. Solved it. Moving on, because we got a couple minutes left before the class period's over, and we're going to close out with a bell.
It's supposed to end right now.
What have we been? What card game have we been playing the most of?
Mao.
Mao.
So much Mao. The most frustrating game of all time. It's very annoying. Maybe we need to do a
That or me and Scheffler are just too good and we win all the time, so everybody else gets frustrated. And
We should
just
do
laugh.
a tutorial video by StuDichotomy on how to play Mao.
We should.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to talk to about
not
the
allowed to
rules.
talk about the
so,
rules.
Yeah.
like,
So what
every
it
single time that video,
It would be a silent movie.
It'd be a silent movie.
This is how
I'll
you
totally
play.
do this, by the way.
This is how you play Mao, and then it's a 15-minute YouTube video of complete silence and people just playing a card game with no explanation. Well, it can't be complete silence. There'd have to be noise of the rules. They're requiring noise.
Yeah, there.
There it is, guys. Thank you for joining us on the StuDichotomy podcast.
We're closing out with me, Perry, Colton, Scheffler, Preston, Alex, Avi, and then Diego just left.
Charlie's really